Gen Z can't afford to buy a house or have a family. It's the question of why houses are getting more expensive is because we're living longer and boomers have investment properties. Okay. And they don't want it to go down.
That's a supply issue, right?
Well, technically, yes, but I mean, it's largely based on. I'm not pinning the blame on anybody over the fact that in order to actually get houses to lower cost, which I wouldn't necessarily call a supply issue, it's more of a. It's a question of, can Gen Z make enough money to compete with the interests of boomers? The answer is no.
No.
And I think the reason is we've destroyed the jobs that they would normally get. They don't exist anymore. And we tell women, you want to be rich, get naked and have sex on camera. And a bunch of girls are trying. It doesn't work for them. And now the worst thing about that, AI just knocked all them out of a job.
Well, I'm happy to talk about OnlyFans. That's a
cyber industrialization.
I'd say the main problem with housing is we don't have a housing policy. We have an investment policy. We want to treat houses as the principal investment vehicle of the entire country. The problem with that is if you want all houses to increase in value forever, which is what we want, then you can't have cheap houses. They will, though, because land is finite and population grows. But when population retracts, these houses will implode and nothing can stop it. That probably will happen demographically.
So I guess my question for you is, ultimately, there is one simple disagreement between us, regardless of what our view on economic policy is. I have a vision of America that is rooted in the American tradition, and you don't. I'm not saying it's an insult, I'm saying you don't.
I agree to disagree on that one. No, I think individual liberty, free trade, and comparative advantage are pretty rooted in the American experience, too.
Yes, but that's all money. I mean, it'd be great if a Chinese guy got those advantages, right? And then he can have a communist party that externally is doing those things you describe. That's not what I'm talking about, and that's the point I'm making. My view of American tradition is not we have a fiscal policy that the Founding Fathers agreed with. It's that I wake up in the morning with snow falling all around, open Christmas presents, and we have apple pie baking sitting on a windowsill, and I go outside and I watch people playing baseball.
Those are nice. They're spiritual and emotional arguments.
They're spiritual.
I think the government should be protecting you from crime and should be enforcing contracts. It should be stopping fraud, negative externalities like pollution. But I don't think the government should protect you from competition.
What about monopoly?
Oh, no. We're not.
Monopolies
again. I'm advancing this to the soul of a nation, not the fiscal policy. The fiscal policy is a component of the argument, but my point is this.
We're now switching from policy to sort of,
which is why I said
ideology.
The key distinction between us is that I have a view of what makes America America based on its American tradition, and you argued for policies based on American policy tradition.
So
I have no interest in the United States becoming an Islamic nation where women have to wear niqab.
Yes, me neither.
Well, go to Dearborn, Michigan, and tell me what you see.
I don't think
female
that's
genital mutilation.
Super germane to the free trade thing.
The point is, why did we have 20 million people on the high estimate? You know what? I'm going to pause and go low estimate. Why did we have 10 million people be allowed to enter this country illegally under the Biden administration?
Biden screwed up where he decided that hold on real quick. We'll talk about immigration in a moment. In terms of the spiritual defending things thing. Let's say that there's an industry that, like I work in entertainment, like you're a journalist, but we're kind of broadly in the same media family, right? Like if stand-up comedy became less popular, I wouldn't want the government to prop it up. And I do stand-up comedy, right?
Agreed. I would question what you have done with your industry and why you couldn't make it more popular.
Right. And if they're same thing, if there are manufacturers that are making buggy whips or are making saddles and people don't want to ride horses as much, I don't think that there's any onus on the government to protect those industries.
And so what I see is a willingness of libertarians, short-term gains, burning the country down.
I don't think they're short term. I mean,
no, hold on. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What if Americans stopped listening to American comedy because the Chinese comics were just funnier? Now, the thing is...
Great. We get more comedy?
And then all the people start adopting Chinese communist views. They start voting for communism. And then they have you arrested because 10 years ago you said something naughty.
I feel like we're getting into civil liberties now. I would very much stand with you in First Amendment protection.
This is the problem I have with libertarians.
I mean, as podcasters,
1 plus 1 equals 2.
Tim, as podcasters, we're already in competition with the entire planet. You and I are in competition with porn any minute.
Indeed, but largely those who speak English and care about these issues.
Which means Australia and Canada and Britain and everything else. And that's part of it.
The short-term benefits you're looking at ignore the cultural ramifications of the world you live in.
We
are in a country right now where you have competing ideologies within our own borders. You've got the multicultural democracy largely represented by progressives in the Democratic Party and constitutional republicanism largely represented by not even Republicans, just the MAGA point, a part of it. What we end up seeing then is when you go to Dearborn, Michigan, for instance, you have an enclave of Islam and Sharia patrol. You have Chinese communist police departments opening across the United States because the graph go up argument ignores what makes a people. What a constitution is the views of the world that constitute its people. And when we open our borders because we say economically it's great, competition's no big deal. 50 years later, you have no free speech. You have no sovereignty, and you now have to contend with a voting bloc that wants your country eroded and destroyed, notably New York with Zoran Mamdani, who explicitly stated in his campaign he will advocate for illegal immigrants against federal law. This country will not exist if we maintain your description of how things should be run. We have to have borders, and we have to have a working body that is able to exist without having to compete with peasants in other countries. There is an enclave, Orania, I believe it's called, in South Africa. Are you familiar with it?
No.
I believe it's called Orania. It is a white private landmass that no one can live there. It's private unless you come to them and they approve you to live there. And they said, we don't allow any hiring of labor from outside the community, because what ended up happening was the money started leaving and the trade started slowing down. So they realized it may be more expensive to hire a neighbor to do the work, but they have to. Otherwise, it all starts falling apart. I am sick and tired of the laissez-faire libertarian. I will squeeze what is left of the American way of living and watch this country become a communist woke cesspool by importing people who don't care for our values and displace our voting blocks, because in the short term, the graph goes up.
So I take umbrage with the idea that me promoting freedom is a communist plot. I'm very much.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you are short-sighted and you are ignorant of the ramifications of how.
Let's go back. So like a lot of people would hearken the 1950s as sort of the high watermark of American manufacturing.
Well, that's only because we blew up Germany and Japan.
It is. And if you were to compare us to the 1950s, we're more prosperous than we were in the 1950s. If the 1950s existed now and it was a separate country we could visit, we would view it like Poland right after the Soviet Union came down. We become far more prosperous.
Prosperous. Let me ask you a question. How would you describe the state of political affairs in the United States?
Political affairs?
Yeah.
As in like romantic trysts or just like politics in general?
Like, how would you describe the political state of the United States right now?
Very bad.
Very, very bad. Why?
Great question, Tim. I actually wrote a book on this called Tribalism is Dumb. I'll be happy to give you a copy of it when we leave. That is a salient question. That's something that has been going on in the United States now for 20 or 30 years. It's been going on in other countries as well. It's been going on in Europe. The countries that have a pre-distributionist economic model, which is kind of what you're advocating for, of let's keep wages higher at the base floor through higher minimum wage, things like that, they're going through the same thing as well. So I would infer that that's not an economic
I didn't advocate for a minimum wage.
Forgive me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
there's market competition within our borders and an expected standard of living for an American.
So
we have eliminated that with open borders.
Say pre-distributivist, what I mean is trying to force corporations on the front end to pay more through some method. Or stopping competition.
Yeah, cultural enforcement.
Rather than redistribution, right? So like France and Germany and Spain have pre-distributed models, which are also going through these things. So I would infer that it's not primarily economic. I think it's largely technological. I think the period that we're living in is probably more similar to...
Largely agree.
Yeah. So that's the main thing. But let's talk about immigrants for a minute. So I stand by my position. I think free trade's been good. I think it's been great for the planet. I think it's been good for America. But I don't want to like hijack your show and only talk about that. Let's talk about immigrants for a minute. You brought up Biden. Biden made a horrible mistake during his presidency, where prior to Biden, if you wanted to seek asylum in the United States, you would come to the United States. They would go, thank you very much. Here's your number. We'll call you when you're up for asylum status. Go back to the last safe port of entry. He reversed that and said, you can come into the United States and then just hang out until we call you. That opened up the floodgates. That's why there was a ton of people that came in under Biden.
Well, I mean, it's more than that. CBP was ordered to bring anybody in. They were ordered that if a child had a number with them that they knew was to a sex trafficker, to ignore it and just send them to the sex trafficker.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
CBP was ordered that if they knew a child was brought across the border for sex slavery, to deliver them to the sex slavers.
Right. Yeah, I'm not here stumping for
what
Biden's
Biden did was
immigration.
not an accident where he said, oopsie, I made a thing go wrong. It was an intentional plan where they were ferrying illegally trafficked children on planes into various red states for years. Tennessee, this erupted in a major scandal when a U.S. plane loaded up a bunch of child trafficking victims onto a plane and flew them into Tennessee. There was one plane that landed in Westchester, New York, and a journalist filmed it coming out and interviewed one of the guys, and he's like, they're making us do it. Biden was assisting, so we can go back to the cartels. Biden was bringing these trafficking victims into this country intentionally. Now, I think the obvious answer is that there are a series of economic faults that are affecting the United States ever since 2008. In the liberal worldview, the numbers improving is better than anything else. And this is a disease for which all political factions find themselves afflicted. Even Donald Trump talks about affordability and how we've conquered it, and he's completely wrong. But it's because you can't win political power unless the people feel comfortable. So the Democrats' play is graph must go up. In the short term, we'll win. In the long term, this country will burn down. And a great example of it is, since the ICE operations kicked off, the Republican Party, the polling has shown Latino voters are bleeding from support for Republicans because many of these voters have family and friends who are here illegally, and they would advocate by vote for people who are not citizens of this country, who are going to receive benefits or at least contribute to the cost of running a nation that comes from the public coffers. You will not survive if you have someone in your home voting to give away what you have to people outside. That has never made sense, and it won't. And it's going to keep getting worse because we are a nation of graph go up, give away our manufacturing jobs, open up our borders to illegal immigrants. Slowly but surely, you end up with enclaves and voting blocks that say, fuck America. Zohran Mamdani being an example of a man who ran for mayor and explicitly stated, I will protect the criminals who broke this country's laws from those in the federal government who seek to enforce these nations' laws. When you get to the point where our largest and most prosperous city is now voting for a man who explicitly states we are de facto outside of the federal government, your country is breaking apart. So I would describe the political state of affairs in this country as civil strife with the political assassinations and murder. I would describe what we're talking about with tariffs and immigration as components of the erosion. I do believe that the internet plays a role in that it keeps the masses ignorant and hateful. The left, I believe, is substantially more hateful while believing they're not, while screaming in people's faces and beating and murdering people. And it's only going to get worse. And unfortunately, we have liberals and libertarians who could stand up and say, and that's why I like the Mises Caucus guys, because they outright say, close the borders.
And that's like, I mean, Milton Friedman, peace be upon him, said years ago, you can't have a welfare state and an immigration state, right? And so I don't.
But the liberal mindset is as you're describing it. We need the short-term gains to make money today. I don't care what happens tomorrow. And I could go to the American people and say, the world that you live in will cease to exist. But boy, will it be fun riding that bomb straight out of the Enola Gay or you know.
Yeah,
whatever.
we do disagree on this. I mean, I don't think it's short term to buy something cheaper. Like an attorney that buys things from a grocery store has a trade deficit with his grocery store, but the attorney's still making more money than the grocery.
But the difference between the grocery stores is minimal. You're talking about other countries that have peasant labor we cannot compete with. And listen, I as a company owner. When we launched our previous Booney skateboard, I think it was the Beasts. It was it was the Weapons. Weapons was the last one. 50 BMG Tim Pool blueprint model, the Cody Mac single action revolver. We made $30,000 in 2 hours selling those skateboards, American made, American pressed.
Great.
To the people who ordered them, I apologize it's taking so long, but you paid American. And be patient because you know you're doing the right thing. I could have made $40,000 if I went to China instead. And actually $10,000, I could have bought myself a gold necklace.
Hey, I applaud that, man.
I don't want a gold necklace. I want my country back.
That's terrific. I don't want you to restrict other people's rights. But if you want to do that, that's fine. And I applaud that you want to hire
Rights.
American workers for it.
It's a right. Explain what you mean by that.
I think you should be able to have a voluntary relationship with anybody unless you are actively hurting them. So, like, if I want to marry 5 people, I'm fine with that. I don't care. If I want to have a economic relationship with somebody, that's also fine. The government shouldn't be stopping me from having economic relationships. So, if you want to hire only Americans and only have your product made in America, I applaud that. And there are a lot of people, as you just pointed out, who would purchase that. I mean, like, you just made a case that people will buy American even if it costs more, that you're able to compete within that market despite having cheaper boards. That's great. And that, to me, indicates...
Well, we sell our boards cheaper than the big companies do. Despite making their boards cheaper, they sell them for more money.
I think the point is, like, America's not just a market. Whereas I understand property rights and I understand, freedom of interaction, freedom of association and stuff. America's not a market. America's not, the United States isn't an economic zone.
And I think I got to be completely honest. I think what you're describing in some circumstances is treasonous.
Okay.
And I know you'll want to clarify, of course,
Sure.
and you will present the caveats because any reasonable person would, but certainly not an American could have a voluntary relationship with a member of the Chinese Communist Party.
Could somebody date a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
I'm talking about an economic relationship with an American and a CCP member. There are some caveats. Would you not agree?
Maybe, but like by that same token, if an American wants to visit Cuba, I'm fine with it. If an American wants to buy stuff from
let me try
Cuba,
this
I'm fine
again
with it.
because you're going to apologize and say you were wrong. You believe that is there any circumstance in which an American can't engage in a voluntary exchange with a CCP member?
Yeah, there could be some circumstances, right? If we were at war, if there were specific elements that, like, I wouldn't allow somebody to buy like rape drugs or something like that. Like,
would you allow like a publicly funded university to give away trade secrets that was paid for by the American public to the CCP?
Probably not.
Why not? It's voluntary.
Well,
Why are you restricting the right of the individual with knowledge to simply have a conversation?
Well, I think in that case you're talking about public funding, though, right?
But no. Hold on.
If a private university
university professor knows in his brain something, they had a study at a university. He read the reports. That's it. He just knows it. It's not confident or classified. Why can't he go to China and take payment from these Chinese people so that the government of China can have access to the same knowledge?
For the same reason that a governor or a member of the executive branch couldn't sell American secrets to the CCP despite the fact that they're an individual.
See, now what you've described is you are for trade protectionism only when you think so.
No, if there were a private individual that came up with some kind of IP and they wanted to sell it, that would be fine. Like if I don't know, Elon Musk wanted to sell something to China, we could run it through CFIUS. Like there are ways to go through in terms of looking at national security. But if an individual within a corporation, within a private part of the sphere, wanted to do trade relations with a communist country.
Agreed. So you think there are certain instances where the government should stop a person from voluntarily exchanging with another person?
Yeah, but the default state is going to be you're allowed to do whatever you want.
All you've just said to me and everyone else is my ideological worldview supersedes yours, and I respect that you believe that because I think mine supersedes yours. I believe I'm correct.
I think we both think we're correct. Yeah.
If you would assert the government has the authority to stop someone from doing trade, I would agree with you.
If you want to put restrictions in place on what the government can do with other governments or even other corporations, I'm fine with that. But unless you've got a specific...
American auto manufacturers can't go and cut deals with foreign manufacturers to hire cheap slave labor. You and I agree. You are for trade protectionism.
For the private sphere, I'm all in favor of that. Like where I got hung up was if we're talking
about... a Raytheon employee can go to the CCP and say, I know how to build a nuclear weapon launched from a Hellfire drone. Let me give that to you. You're going to say no. My point is this. You are simply asserting if it benefits me, it should be allowed, but there are certain things where the government should stop voluntary exchange.
Tim, in all honesty, in all complete sincerity, do you think that is what I'm saying?
Yes.
You think that I'm saying that there's no appreciable difference between saying you can't have a tariff versus you can sell nuclear secrets to the CCP?
What you are missing is that you have in your mind the limiters on when you believe the government should stop voluntary exchange. You have already explained scenarios in which the government should stop and even punish voluntary exchange. You have made the argument that you disagree on where that line should be in some areas, where I agree the line should be a little bit further. Yet at the same time, you've argued the government should not do it. So you are wrong. You do believe the government should. You just want to get cheaper stuff where I think the cheaper stuff you're getting hurts us.
I don't think I have to be an anarchist to oppose. to not have any kind of government regulation. Like,
So
I'm
let's
in
just
favor
pause
of
real
some
quick.
government.
We agree. There are instances where the government should stop and even punish individuals who engage in certain economic exchanges.
If they're selling nuclear secrets, sure.
Drugs?
If there's, I mean, going back to the cartel thing, if you really wanted to lower the cartels, like, I would figure out a way to decriminalize most drugs. That would take
So
away the
hold
money
on.
they've
So the
got.
answer is yes, right?
In terms of
You believe the government should stop some economic exchanges of
some economic exchanges, but just pointing out that I want the government occasionally to do things doesn't justify every instance of government interaction.
My point is, you said previously you think people should be free to do these things, but you, of course, don't mean it. You just think that you should be able to engage in economic behaviors that'll benefit you and how you see the world, and I think you are destroying this country by doing so. Now, again, we would both agree an individual taking a state secret or general information that would benefit China in destroying this country, the government should stop that, right?
Hey, Tim, let's back up. I don't want to do any character attacks here. I don't want to hurt anybody in America. I'm a guy in a three-piece suit. If Trump does 10%, 15% tariffs, the reality is it's probably not going to impact me. I can take that on the chin. I think that it's actually going to hurt manufacturing in the long run because it's going to hurt intermediate parts. It's going to affect how much stuff costs for people that are poor. I'm concerned about them.
In the short term.
I can make a good faith argument, and I would hope you could concede to me that while I might be wrong, I'm still operating in good faith.
Yes, and you are wrong, because again, my point is simply, the premise of your argument is government shouldn't restrict voluntary exchange.
That should be the default state.
But you don't actually agree with
There are going to be exceptions to that, in the same way that the government shouldn't kill people, but there are instances where it's going to have to kill people. That doesn't mean I think that the sheriff can gun down anybody they
only
want.
real argument is the sectors in which you believe you should be allowed to trade with foreign countries, and I disagree with you on that. I believe that in the short term, giving away our manufacturing, I believe that in giving away our manufacturing to Mexico or China or other countries will benefit us in the short term, as consumers now get a cheaper product and the company gets a higher profit margin. In the long term, you eliminate the jobs, you eliminate the culture, cities begin to dry up, families stop happening because they can't buy food and they can't seek shelter anymore. And now we are looking at a population collapse, a financial crisis, an ideological conflict. Long term, with tariffs, people start to rebuild factories begrudgingly. They start to bring back these jobs. Now young people who didn't have a job before start generating these jobs. Interest in culture starts to rebuild, and is within a confine that short term, it may get a little bit more expensive. Long term, you will have a self-sustaining ecosystem, an economy, household management. The argument that we had was simply based on where you want to draw the line and where I want to draw the line.
Yeah, you said something about that if it's cheaper, then that's good, or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I'm very much on the side of the consumer.
I run on cheaper at what cost, because it's not all fiscal. Something might be very cheap to order from the barbarian leader, but then the barbarian leader gets money and he poisons your DNA and kills you, in 7 years because you funded a danger that you didn't, just because it was cheaper, you were actually funding a negative that you didn't. So you have to really
This is a great point. Let me
on
ask
these
you,
costs.
is it good that China is buying up our farmland?
I'm not terribly bothered by that. So there is a thing we've got called CFIUS, which is the Committee on International, I can't remember what it is, but basically the Senate has a committee where if there's going to be a foreign entity buying some American industry, some kind of company, it has to go through approval for them. So, for example, there was a big kerfuffle a few years ago where a Saudi company wanted to buy I think the Port of Los Angeles. What that basically meant was they were just going to be the company in charge of logistics for it. They weren't in charge of security. CFIUS looked at it and went, this does not pose a threat to American security because American security is still handled by America.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.